about to listen to a breakdown of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. But before we dive into the murky waters of your own psychology, do me a solid. Hit that like button like it owes you money. Smash subscribe so you don't miss out on me making you smarter. And drop a comment below. Seriously, tell me about the dumbest financial decision you made because your brain went on autopilot. I read all of them. All right, let's get into it. So you think you're smart. No, really, you do. You walk around thinking you are the captain of your own ship, the master of your destiny, and a generally rational human being who makes decisions based on logic, facts, and maybe a spreadsheet or two. Well, I have some bad news for you. According to Daniel Kahneman, a guy who won a Nobel Prize for figuring out how we think, your brain is actually a lazy, glitchy piece of wet hardware that is constantly lying to you. That is the core premise of his massive book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It is a terrifying and hilarious look at why humans are terrible at statistics, gambling, and generally just functioning in the modern world. Kahneman breaks the human brain down into two main characters. He calls them System 1 and System 2. Let's start with System 1. System 1 is the fast thinker. This is your gut instinct. It operates automatically, quickly, and with zero effort. It is the part of your brain that sees an angry face and knows the person is mad, or hears a loud noise and makes you jump. System 1 is like that one friend you have who is always 3 drinks in at a party. It is confident, it is loud, and it is usually wrong about complex stuff, but it acts like it knows everything. System 1 is great for survival. If you see a lion, you do not want to stop and calculate the velocity of the lion relative to the wind speed. You want to run. That is System 1. Then there is System 2. System 2 is the slow thinker. This is your conscious, reasoning self. It handles complex calculations, logic, and self-control. System 2 is like a tired, grumpy accountant who hates his job. He is really good at math and logic, but he is incredibly lazy. He is sitting in the back office of your brain with his feet up, refusing to do any work unless he absolutely has to. When you ask someone, what is 2 plus 2? Your drunk friend, System 1, shouts 4 before the accountant even looks up. But if I ask you what is 17 times 24, System 1 goes quiet. It has no idea. Now you have to wake up the accountant. You have to focus, stop walking, and actually burn calories to figure it out. That is System 2. The problem, and basically the whole point of the book, is that we think we are the accountant. We think we are System 2, but we're actually living in System 1 like 90% of the time. The accountant is so lazy that he often just rubber stamps whatever the drunk guy says. Let's talk about something called priming. This is the first major way your brain gets hacked. Priming is when an idea is planted in your head and it influences your behavior without you knowing it. Kahneman talks about a study where they made young people make sentences out of words associated with being old. Words like Florida, bald, gray, and wrinkle. After the test, the young people walked down the hallway significantly slower than the ones who didn't see the old words. They literally started acting like old people just because they read the word Florida. It is insane. Think about this when you go shopping. If a store plays French music, you are statistically more likely to buy French wine. You think you chose that Merlot because you have a refined palate. No. You chose it because an accordion was playing in the background and your System 1 brain said, "Oui, let us be fancy today." Next up, let's talk about cognitive ease. This is the idea that your brain loves things that are familiar and easy to process. If something is easy to read or easy to hear, your brain assumes it's true. This is why catchy pop songs become hits, even if the lyrics are trash. The first time you hear it, you hate it. But after the radio plays it 50 times, your brain goes, "Oh, I know this pattern. This is safe. I love this." This is also why bold font on a clear background feels more trustworthy than faint font. If you want to lie to someone, write it in a nice, big, bold font. Their lazy System 2 accountant will look at it and say, well, it is easy to read, so it must be a fact. It's basically the psychological reason why fake news spreads so fast. If it feels true and fits a simple narrative, we buy it. Now, let's move on to one of my favorites, the anchoring effect. This is the reason you're broke. Anchoring happens when you consider a value for an unknown quantity before estimating that quantity. The first number you see acts as an anchor, and you adjust everything else around it. Here's a classic example. You walk into a high-end designer store. You see a handbag that costs $5,000. You laugh. You say, I'm not an idiot. I'm not paying $5,000 for a bag. But then, right next to it, you see a smaller bag for $500. Suddenly, $500 looks like a steal. It looks cheap. If you had seen the $500 bag at Target, you would have screamed. But because you were anchored to the $5,000 price tag, your brain thinks you're getting a deal. This happens in salary negotiations too. The first person to say a number wins. If you walk in and ask for $100,000, the negotiation happens around that number. If you wait for them to offer $60,000, good luck getting them up to $100,000. You're anchored. Then we have the availability heuristic. This is a fancy way of saying that if you can easily think of an example of something, you assume it happens all the time. This is why people are terrified of shark attacks and plane crashes, but they will happily text while driving on the highway. System 1 loves drama. A shark attack is vivid, it's scary, it makes the news. So your brain thinks sharks are a huge threat. Meanwhile, heart disease is boring. It does not make headlines, so you eat the cheeseburger while worrying about the shark. You are statistically way more likely to die from falling off a ladder than a shark attack, but nobody makes horror movies about ladders, so you aren't afraid of them. Kahneman also talks about something called the law of small numbers. This is our tendency to trust small sample sizes way too much. We look at a tiny bit of data and create a whole story around it. Imagine you're looking for a new laptop. You read all the reviews, you look at the specs, and it's the best laptop on the market. Then you talk to your friend Steve. Steve says, "Oh, I bought that laptop and the screen died in 2 days. Don't buy it." Suddenly, you don't buy the laptop. Logically, that's stupid. The reviews represent thousands of people. Steve is one guy who probably dropped his laptop in the toilet. But because Steve is right in front of you, his story overrides the statistics. We trust anecdotes more than data because anecdotes are easy for System 1 to digest. Data requires System 2 to wake up and do work. Now, let's get into the illusion of understanding, or what we call hindsight bias. This is the "I knew it all along" phenomenon. The world is chaotic and random, but we hate that. We want the world to make sense. So after something happens, we create a story that makes it look like it was inevitable. Think about the stock market. Every time the market crashes, you have pundits on TV explaining exactly why it happened. It was the housing bubble. It was the tech sector. It was the alignment of Jupiter. They sound so confident. But if they knew exactly why it was going to happen, why didn't they become billionaires yesterday? Because they didn't know. Nobody knew. We just connect the dots backwards to make ourselves feel smarter. It's like looking at your ex after a breakup and saying, "I always knew he was a loser." No, you didn't. You thought he was a mysterious musician. Now you know he's just unemployed. That's hindsight bias. One of the biggest lessons in the book is about regression to the mean. This sounds boring and math-heavy, but it's actually life-changing. It basically means that extraordinary events are usually followed by average ones. Kahneman tells a story about flight instructors. The instructors believed that screaming at pilots when they messed up made them fly better the next time, and praising them when they flew well made them fly worse. They thought being mean worked, and being nice made people lazy. But Kahneman pointed out it was just regression to the mean. If a pilot has an amazing landing, statistically his next landing will probably be just average, because nobody is amazing all the time. So the instructor praises him, and the next landing is worse. The instructor thinks the praise caused the failure. Conversely, if a pilot has a terrible landing, he can only go up from there. The instructor screams at him, and the next landing is better. The instructor thinks the screaming worked. It is not magic, it's just statistics. So stop yelling at your employees or you kids when they mess up thinking it fixes them. They were probably going to do better next time. Now we have to talk about prospect theory and loss aversion. This is the idea that losing money hurts way more than gaining money feels good. In fact, the pain of losing is about twice as powerful as the joy of winning. Imagine I flip a coin. If it's heads, you lose $100. If it's tails, you win $150. Mathematically, you should take that bet every time, but most people won't. The fear of losing that $100 freezes them.
This is why you hold on to losing stocks for too long. You do not want to sell and make the loss real. As long as you hold it, there is a chance it comes back. That is your brain trying to avoid the pain of loss. It is also why you stay in bad relationships. You have invested years and leaving feels like a loss, so you stay and make it worse. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. You finish the terrible movie because you paid for the ticket. You ate the burnt food because you paid for the meal. It is irrational. The money is gone. You are just punishing yourself twice, but System 1 hates admitting defeat. Finally, Kahneman wraps up with the concept of the two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self is the you that is living right now. It is the you that feels the dentist drill or tastes the ice cream. The remembering self is the you that looks back on it later. Here is the kicker. The remembering self is a tyrant. It does not care about how long an experience lasted. It only cares about the peak of the emotion and how it ended. This is called the peak end rule. You could have an amazing 2-week vacation, perfect weather, great food, total relaxation. But on the very last day, you lose your luggage and get into a screaming match with a taxi driver. Your remembering self will ruin the whole memory. You will say, "We had a terrible trip." No, you didn't. You had 13 amazing days and 1 bad hour. But because the bad part was at the end, the whole memory is tainted. On the flip side, this is why women agree to have a second child. Childbirth is objectively painful and exhausting for the experiencing self. But the end, holding the baby, is so joyful that the remembering self edits out the hours of screaming and says, "Let's do that again." So what is the conclusion here? Are we just doomed to be irrational, impulsive idiots who are scared of losses and bad at math? Well, kinda. But the point of the book isn't to make you feel bad. It is to make you aware. Kahneman wants you to recognize when your System 1 is taking the wheel. When you are about to make a big financial decision or judge someone or take a risk, you need to stop. You need to recognize that your gut instinct is probably reacting to a simplified, emotional version of reality. You need to grab your inner lazy accountant by the collar, shake him awake, and force him to look at the data. You can't turn off System 1. It is always running. But you can learn to spot the optical illusions of the mind. You can learn to say, "Wait, am I buying this car because it is a good deal or because the salesman gave me a free coffee and anchored me to a higher price?" Thinking is hard. It consumes energy. Your body literally wants to avoid it. But the next time you find yourself jumping to a conclusion, just pause. Ask yourself, is this me thinking or is this the drunk toddler in my brain calling the shots? And that is a wrap on Thinking Fast and Slow. If you felt your System 2 brain waking up during this video, hit that like button. If you let your System 1 autopilot take over and you zoned out halfway through, subscribe anyway so you can try again next time. And seriously, comment below. I want to hear the story of a time you fell for the sunk cost fallacy. Did you stay in a job too long? Did you fix up a car that was total trash? Let me know. I'll catch you in the next one. Don't let your